Hi guys, so we just put this presentation together just to sort of build on what we've talked about previously in the past presentations on the main macronutrients, obviously protein and carbohydrates, but now just looking more specifically at the nutrition and the specific type and timing of that nutrition to obviously support your performance goals and that of recovery. Of course, a lot of you do have body composition goals, just to obviously lean up, get a bit more tone, lose some body fat, but there are a lot of you in the program now who are obviously working towards more of a performance focused goal, be that ultra endurance, triathlon, marathon, half marathon, things like that. So I just thought we'd put this together just so we can talk a little bit deeper about when best obviously to consume our nutrition around training, double training days, heavily depleting exercise, just to support your performance. So you're progressing through that just as well as you're progressing towards your general goals of obviously body composition change and things like that. So just a little bit of an overview. Obviously, we really need to utilize nutrition just to support general performance in the gym, be that resistance training or endurance training. And the main part of nutrition you need to focus on is obviously the recovery between your sessions. So the main macronutrients we're going to be discussing today are obviously carbs and protein. A lot of you will have low fat targets on your MyFitnessPal. Partly because obviously we want you to consume higher carbohydrates. These are better just for in general for performance, for your ultra endurance performance especially, and any high intensity training. So regarding carbohydrates, we're looking to maximize muscle glycogen stores to reload for future sessions. For those obviously who are unsure, glycogen is what we store sugar as in our muscles to promote performance. And then protein as well, obviously everyone knows this hopefully by now, but we want to strategically consume protein throughout the day just to support the general muscle recovery and growth. Resistance and endurance training are both glycogen depleting, so during both we'll be using glucose to support the training session. So post-training, obviously your body will be actively looking to replenish these stores for obviously future sessions and to help with recovery. So in terms of if you're doing double training days or you're just on a single training program, it doesn't really matter. It's really important obviously to know what specific nutrients we should be consuming, at what time and how. We should sort of be scheduling our meals around your training, and then obviously what sources of carbs and what sources of protein are best to consume at specific times to support performance. Just regarding this presentation specifically, and in terms of like a performance nutrition standpoint, there are three fundamentals that we're going to cover. So regarding each macronutrient, we're going to talk about the total amount, specific timing of each macronutrient, and then obviously the type of macronutrient we want to be consuming at certain times. So I'm just going to kick it off with protein. Very straightforward, nothing hopefully you haven't heard before. But obviously hitting your total protein daily goal is the most important part of promoting obviously strength and physique goals. When you're in the gym, as mentioned, we're sort of breaking down our muscle. So a lot of people see the gym as almost like building muscle, but actually causing tears in our muscle. So it's really important. Obviously, we're strategically consuming protein throughout the day to support the recovery of this and then to build up further. Regarding timing of protein, so muscle protein synthesis occurs post-consumption of protein. So this comes with what we call a frequency and a threshold timestamp. So in terms of frequency, that protein synthesis or that muscle building response will occur for around 3 to 4 hours post feeding. However, then after that, it will drop down. So when we say frequency, we're really on about wanting to consume protein every 3 to 4 hours throughout the day, just to consistently keep that muscle building response high. And also threshold, we want to be consuming around 0.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body mass. For most of you will generally be around at least 25 to 35 grams of protein at each feeding, just to make sure we bump it up, hit that threshold so your body's response to build muscle is nice and high. So as I say, aim to consume total protein target and split these between 4 to 5 meals throughout the day, obviously ensuring we're getting that frequency in and also hitting that threshold. A lot of people think that there's this like anabolic window. There's a lot of evidence out there now to suggest that consuming protein after training is not necessarily a major factor in obviously generating overall muscle growth. So as long as you're hitting that protein daily target and splitting your meals evenly, consuming protein post-workout is not necessarily that essential. And then just regarding the types, obviously we want to be going for those animal sources. We want to get in those high essential amino acids in. So we're thinking obviously animal sources such as lean beef, pork, poultry, chicken, turkey, things like that, eggs, white fish, and then low fat dairy. If you do want to consume protein post-workout, it will also go towards, obviously, you're hitting your overall total protein intake anyway. But those whey proteins, soy protein shakes, they're really fast absorbing and obviously convenient to consume on the go as well, if you're busy and things like that. So a bit more about carbs now. So this is just for you if you're on a single training day program. Much like protein, hitting that total daily carbohydrate intake will be the most important factor for ensuring your post-exercise recovery before doing another session the following day. Now this obviously takes into account that the recovery window between workouts is around 24 hours. So if you're in a routine of going in every morning or every evening, things like that, your recovery period will be around 24 hours before your next session. So just focusing on hitting that carbohydrate goal will be enough. Regarding timing, as mentioned, as you are recovering for 24 hours between workouts, there's no specific protocol behind carb timing as long as we're hitting that target. Although post-training your body is looking to recover and it offers sort of that environment to speed up recovery, carbohydrate consumption throughout the day generally has the habit of just basically catching up. So if your glycogen stores are still slightly depleted and you eat a carb meal, that will eventually catch up and fill up your stores before obviously going into another training session if your recovery period is 24 hours long. Regarding the type, obviously most of you still have body composition goals. So obviously that will come with obviously reducing body fat, building muscle. So really from this standpoint, we're still focusing on a physique. And obviously physique does have an implication on your performance, especially if you're endurance training. In terms of obviously body fat, that is dead weight, what we call it, that we have to carry. So obviously keeping body fat as low as we can will be really beneficial. So obviously the carbs we want to be consuming if you're on a single training day programs and there's no specific timing or type of carbohydrate that we need to be consuming, we do want to stick with those obviously lower glycemic index carbs. These will help obviously support weight management, reduce sugar spikes, prevent cravings, keep you feeling fuller for longer. And obviously the examples of this, as covered in the previous one, brown rice, brown pastas, sweet potatoes, quinoa, lots of fruit, lots of veg, things like that. Now, a little bit more intricate. So double training days or heavily depleting workouts. When I say heavily depleting, I mean when you're exercising for an hour, hour 30, really depleting those muscle glycogen stores. So again, obviously hitting that total daily carbohydrate intake will be really, really important. We want to have a really nice high carbohydrate intake to support constant synthesis of glycogen into the muscles. Now there is this sort of phrase here which we like to use. So we want to fuel for the work required. So when I mean this, I mean, for example, I will train quite heavily on a weekend. So I generally burn around 4,000 to 5,000 calories on a weekend. So if I stuck to just specific calories and carbs every single day to hit a certain target, I would probably be under fueling for that longer day of training. So when you say fuel for the work required, we're mainly talking about increasing a certain amount of carbohydrates on a certain day to fuel that workout. And then maybe cutting down on other days. So this is something to consider, something I've certainly considered with some of my clients regarding obviously bumping down the carbs on certain rest days to allow for extra carbs on those higher days. But something obviously your coach will probably speak to you about, or if they haven't spoken to you about already, something you can discuss if you do have double training days. With obviously double training days, your recovery period is low. So you'll be probably training in the morning and the afternoon. So a shorter recovery period of around less than 8 hours. That's generally where we want to really be focusing on carb intake just to accelerate that recovery. So in terms of timing, obviously post-exercise, your body provides favorable conditions to support obviously faster uptake of sugar back into the muscles basically. So if we ever have that pump, what people say, that is obviously blood flow to the muscle. That is obviously what's giving us that pump. So that increased blood flow and a greater insulin response post-training, obviously it tries to accelerate the rate at which we can consume carbohydrates. So we do want to be focusing on consuming at least 1 gram of carbs per kilogram of body weight within the first hour of training. So for example, I'm 80 kilograms. So within that first hour of training, I will try to consume at least 80 grams of carbohydrates, if not 100 grams of carbohydrates, just to obviously speed up that recovery process. If you're on a double training day and you're also completing one of the training sessions which is heavily depleting, so for example, say in the morning you ran a half marathon which took you 2 hours, you'll be heavily depleted from that. Probably all of your muscle glycogen stores will be depleted. And then obviously we're training, for example, upper body or lower body in the evening. We want to go with that same protocol of 1 gram per kilogram of body mass within the first hour, and then we probably want to be consuming that exact same amount every hour for the first 4 hours after training. This will really help speed up recovery and make sure you're going into that later session much more recovered and much more full of carbohydrates. That being obviously at least one of the training sessions is really heavily depleting. And regarding the type, we want to be consuming fast-absorbing, high glycemic index carbohydrates, as this will obviously accelerate the rate at which the food you've consumed goes into your bloodstream and then into the muscles. There's obviously a bigger insulin spike post-exercise, and we want to make the most of this, so consuming those more sugary carbs will be beneficial. Also, those lower GI carbs, which I talked about on the previous slide, they can be malabsorbed because obviously they're quite high in fiber. So we just want to basically ensure that all the carbs we're eating are going straight into the muscles. So you want to think obviously bananas, dates, raisins, they're all really high sugar fruits. Sports drinks, think about consuming them probably during sessions as well. Bagels, jam, honey, malt loaf, sugary cereals, things like that. These are really going to benefit you to recover before obviously going into that final session. So just an example of obviously what that double training day might look like in terms of obviously feeding. So this is an example if I had a 10k run in the morning and then a lower body session in the evening. So for breakfast, obviously consuming high fiber carbohydrates just to slowly release that into the muscles to recover from any depletion that's happened overnight. A little bit of peanut butter as well, because that fat intake can slow down the carbohydrate into the muscles just to delay that carbohydrate response. Post-exercise or post-run, obviously we're going to go for those high GI carbs, so bagel, jam, banana, and then also consuming a protein shake as well. That'll ensure obviously any depletion from that first workout is going to be taken care of quite quickly. Lunch, just as normal, any meal preps you've made, so chicken, rice, roasted veg is a good example here. And then that pre-lower body session, we're also just going to take in some more high GI carbs, so sports drink, a banana, or a bowl of cereal, just to ensure any extra depletion is taken care of and ensure that performance is good for that lower body session. Post lower body session, this is assuming obviously afterwards you will have a recovery period of 24 hours. So we can just go back to those low GI carbs, so salmon with a quinoa, salad, things like that. As obviously we don't have any immediate training session, which obviously we're looking to upregulate that storage of carbohydrates into the muscles. So as you can see here, that 1 hour post run and that pre-lower body consumption is where we're sort of putting in those high GI carbs just to ensure that we're fully stocked up between the sessions. And then any time after that, we can just go back to consuming our normal low GI carbs, obviously to support our body composition and our weight management. And then finally, just a little bit about intra-workout carbs, as I do know a lot of you are on sort of like half marathon training programs where the volume of endurance sessions especially is ever increasing. So if those higher intensity exercise or endurance sessions do last longer than around an hour to an hour 30, consuming carbohydrates during training can obviously promote immediate performance during the run and also attenuate excessive post-exercise damage as well. So basically when we consume carbs during a run, we're more likely to utilize those carbs, and our muscle stores of carbs are basically going to be left alone. So in terms of obviously post-exercise damage as well, we won't be fully depleted, so that recovery period won't be as bad and won't be as fatiguing. So in terms of like how much and when during the run, so your gut can generally absorb about 60 grams of glucose per hour. So obviously we want to be aiming, especially if we're running for longer than 1 hour 30, pushing 2 hour mark, you want to aim to consume around 60 grams of glucose per hour. Now, just to put this into perspective, a standard Science and Sport or CIS gel will provide you with about 22 grams per serving. So looking to maybe consume 2 or 3 of these on a run. Something I use as well, which I hadn't heard of, and maybe a few of you haven't heard of either, I use Morton gels. These provide double the amount of carbohydrates. So obviously, if you struggle to consume carbs during a run, obviously when you're running hard and it's high intensity, it's quite uncomfortable to obviously take things in terms of water and gels and stuff like that. So I go for this gel just because it provides a bigger bang for your buck sort of thing. Something else to take into consideration, it does take approximately 30 minutes for the glucose to enter your bloodstream from administration. So obviously think about consuming that gel a little bit earlier on into the workout. So around 30 minutes in, if you're going to be hitting these like 1 hour 30 time limits, just to allow time for the glucose to hit your system, and then obviously provide that performance benefit towards the end of the run. So other examples that you consume, obviously sports gels, which I've mentioned, sports drinks, electrolyte carb drinks as well, bananas, flat coke, that's something that's quite heavily researched on and provides a good performance benefit as well. And then just little tips to think about regarding this. So there's such thing as flavor fatigue. So for those of you on excessively long runs, flavor fatigue is basically if you're just consuming the same carbohydrate, so the same gel or the same banana or same sports drink, it can cause sort of a flavor fatigue, which can make people feel quite nauseous. So if you are running for a much longer period of time, consider taking various carbohydrate sources, so maybe a banana and a gel and a sports drink, just so you're providing your body with different carbohydrate sources, so you don't start to get these sort of GI upsets. And then also finally train your gut. So like we train our running performance to get better, you can train your gut as well. So getting your gut used to taking on water and taking on these carbohydrates and energy gels over time can improve sort of your GI response, and especially if you suffer from like GI distress, diarrhea, nausea on these longer runs, training and building up the amount of carbs you're able to sustain when obviously doing these longer runs can really help your performance when it does come to obviously running those longer distances or performing in an event. You're much likely to have a better gut trained for it, and then obviously not get these unfortunate side effects. But other than that, that's pretty much everything. So just things to consider, obviously on those double training days, we want to be making sure we're promoting carbohydrate intake, potentially considering consuming less carbohydrates on your rest days and more carbohydrates on those days where you've got your double workouts or you've got heavily depleting exercise. Protein is set as normal. Obviously, we want to be consuming those high protein intakes consistently every day and keeping that frequency high throughout the days. And then obviously, if you are doing extra sort of ultra endurance preparation, we want to consider obviously starting to implement carbohydrates during the runs and getting our bodies used to consuming these sort of higher rates of carbohydrates just to support your performance and to support obviously post-exercise recovery as well.